everybody. We're so glad that you're here. This is our National Social Anxiety Center clinical education talk on social anxiety and dating. Before we get started, I want to just share a few quick housekeeping items. Well, first of all, I am Taylor Wilmer. I am a National Social Anxiety Center associate located here in Virginia. I work for InStride Health, and I'm an associate on the board and chair of the clinical education component of our program. And a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. Just a heads up, we're recording this webinar, and we go from 1 o'clock Eastern time to 2 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to try and save some time at the end for questions, but as you have questions along the way, also feel free to pop those in the chat. I will be monitoring those as Shamin talks. And I'd love to now introduce our speaker. Shamin Ajan is the CEO and clinical director of Shamin Ajan Psychotherapy, a Brooklyn regional clinic of the National Social Anxiety Center. She's a certified diplomat of the Academy of Cognitive and Behavioral Therapies, an ASECT certified sex therapist, and a board member of the National Social Anxiety Center. And she has expertise in a number of areas with specific interest in areas of social anxiety, sexual dysfunction, relationships, self-care, and trauma. And in addition to her clinical practice, Shamin is also a graduate school instructor of CBT courses at Boston University School of Social Work, an expert reviewer at Mind Body Green, and the author of the award-winning book, Seeking Soulmate, Ditch the Dating Game and Find Real Connection. We're thrilled to have Shamin here to talk with us about ways that we can help our clients navigate dating with social anxiety. Shamin, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for that amazing introduction. I always feel so, I don't know, after hearing all of that, I hope I get to live up to the expectations that come along with that. I'm really excited to be here talking to you guys about something very near and dear to my heart, my socially anxious folks and my dating folks. So today we're going to dive in. There's a lot to talk about here. We're not going to talk about all aspects of dating. That's going to be a challenging thing to do in 1 hour, but we will dive into, let's see if I can toggle this. We will dive into the beginning stages of dating and social anxiety. I have identified in my work with my clients 4 stages, so we'll spend some time talking about that after we talk about social anxiety versus dating anxiety. And then we'll close it up by talking about some things to consider at any stage of dating. So in terms of the reasons why I have identified those 4 initial stages of dating, it's because over the years in my work with my clients, I have seen them get stuck in these various areas. And so I found it really helpful to talk to them about each of these 4 stages and then work through them and then work our way back to the very beginning and having them go and try it out and do some behavioral experiments. Social anxiety versus dating anxiety. I find that people conflate the two, and it's understandable. Dating is inherently stressful for all of us. It doesn't matter how skilled you are, it doesn't matter how many dates you've been on. It is a anxiety-provoking experience. And so it makes sense that many people experience some level of anxiety around it. It opens us up to vulnerability, uncertainty. We're looking at whether there's chemistry, how we look, if they treat us a certain way, if they like us. There's a lot that we're thinking about. And so it makes sense that we would feel some level of stress and anxiety around dating, but that anxiety is much different than social anxiety. Social anxiety is characterized, as we know, by nervousness and discomfort and fear of being judged in certain social situations. And that concern about being embarrassed or humiliated leads to overcorrection often, or even avoidance much more often. Whereas dating anxiety is situation specific, and it occurs when someone has worries or fears around dating, but this doesn't interfere with their lives or stop them from dating, at least not long term. They might pause from time to time, but they get back out there. If you have social anxiety, you're more likely dealing with these normal challenges of dating, but also the very debilitating symptoms that prevent you from living the life that you truly want. I love this hand grabbing for help in the quicksand. Socially anxious folks can find it really hard to initiate dates due to fear of rejection or negative judgment. So, the normal dating experience and the normal dating anxiety many of us experience is often amplified for those with social anxiety. And that worry can minimize the possibilities to truly connect with somebody new because the connection before the connection is even made. Someone who's socially anxious is worried about being shut down or worried about being rejected. And to make a genuine connection with somebody, you need to show up as your authentic self. This in itself can be really challenging if you're worried about being criticized, if you're dissecting your appearance or your personality or how smart you are, if your inner critic has taken over. And this negative self talk then can lead to someone with social anxiety showing up as a representative of themselves, not their true, authentic, genuine self. And that lowers the chance of making a true love match. And then this only helps to get reinforced by the negative self-talk you have that's sustained by a feedback loop. And that loop looks something like, I don't know how to act on a date. Therefore, I'm going to act weird. I need to act a certain way to cover it up. Right. So becoming over prepared, over rehearsing, it inevitably goes badly. And the information then tells you that this is the proof that I'm never going to find love because they see that I'm awkward. And this leads to more overcorrection or even avoidance altogether and a self fulfilling prophecy. So, the four initial stages of dating. To maximize my clients' chances of dating success with social anxiety, I identified these four stages over time working with them and some strategies to support clients through each stage. For example, before you get to exposures, your clients should have very, very clear expectations of possible increased anxiety and the tools they need to be able to manage that anxiety. So, jumping all the way to the date before talking about all of the stages is setting them up for failure. So, I found it very helpful, not only for me as the clinician to have these stages, but for the client also to have an understanding of what there is to come and um, and how to process each stage of the initial part of dating. And we spend some time getting familiar with each one and the steps. We develop the skills along the way. This helps to give them a little bit more of a sense of confidence, and they move through dating with much more ease and much more success. Um, okay, so we've got a lot to dive in here. Let's see. Um, and as I said, there are four stages. Stage one, and I was going to try to name it something more fancy, but these are the titles I've been using for years. So, stage one, putting yourself out there, anxiety. Stage two, preparing for the date, anxiety. Stage three, during the actual date, anxiety. And stage four, after the date, anxiety. So, stage one, putting yourself out there, anxiety. I often hear from my clients, I don't even know where to start or where to go or what to do. They're just completely overwhelmed at the idea of dating. And when you have social anxiety, dating can represent number one, everything you've been avoiding. And then number two, enduring extreme discomfort. So simplifying the process is one way to support our clients and remove some obstacles for them. And we do this by starting at the very beginning, where to meet people if you have social anxiety. At this stage, you're likely to uncover some really unhelpful automatic thoughts, and some themes are going to start popping up. some recurring negatively skewed beliefs, or as I call them in my book, Seeking Soulmate, Ditch the Dating Game and Find Real Connection, dating distortions. And they're the ones that we're all familiar with. If they're experiencing cognitive distortions or hot thoughts or warped thoughts in certain social situations, they're going to experience them in their dating experiences too. So the ones that typically show up are your mind reading and your should statements and your black and white thinking or catastrophizing, or discounting the positives, overgeneralizing, emotional reasoning, personalizing, what ifing, and then of course labeling and judging. That one comes up a lot. So teaching your clients how their cognitive distortions or dating distortions apply to their dating experience and how they impact the way they feel about dating and how that then impacts on the way they behave gives them real insight into how their internal experience is impacting their dating success, and showing them how to modify and challenge these thoughts will help to set them up to be able to experiment a little bit more as they progress through the stages. So giving them these classic tools, your simple thought records, your dysfunctional thought records, and then Noah Kleinman has one, the doubt register, that I find my clients gravitate to. That helps them to develop these very foundational skills that are going to be really important and helpful for them later on down the line. I also talk about using an integrative strategy. And what that means is integrating online and in-person strategies. And this is effective for everyone, but it's particularly effective for folks who have social anxiety. Just to kind of go back a little bit, a recent poll by Forbes, they polled 5,000 people, and they found that the top place people are finding love matches is online with apps. 45% of respondents on dating apps. I was also pleased to find 33% connecting with a friend, being connected by a friend, and then 32% at concerts or festivals. So I find this to be a really good example of a hybrid strategy, an integrative strategy that you can help your clients follow. Apps are very, very popular. Your Bumbles, your Hinge, your Tinder. Tinder is #1 worldwide. Coffee Meets Bagel. These are all really popular online apps that people are using and finding success with. But people with social anxiety can really benefit from the apps for a lot of reasons. I often find that they want to meet someone organically, though. Have you had people come to you and say they want to meet organically? They want to stay off the apps. I want to meet somebody organically. I always find this to be funny because that's fine. You can meet somebody organically, you can, but a meet cute, like what happens in the movies, is not a strategy. It's not a plan. So yes, you can have that as something that you want to happen, but if you really want to meet somebody, and especially for folks who tend to avoid a plan, a strategy is going to be helpful, and increases your odds that you're going to find somebody. So why are the apps really helpful for folks with social anxiety? One, because you can get a lot of information up front before meeting somebody. And so that helps to put people at ease. It also provides a safe space for socially anxious people to socialize. And it gives you the time and the space that you need to be able to think about how you want to respond instead of feeling put on the spot. And then the barrier that is created by the screen, it helps with rejection a little bit. It's a little bit easier not to personalize it when the rejection is not face to face, and you can hide your embarrassment a little bit better behind a screen, so you don't feel quite as exposed. But with all of these benefits of the apps, there are some other things that you want to consider. There was a study titled Associations Between Social Anxiety, Depression, and the use of mobile dating applications in 2020. And it found that socially anxious women were more likely to use dating apps than socially anxious men. And men are less likely to initiate contact using apps. Um, Another study found that increased frequency of use and longer duration of use were both associated with greater psychological distress and depression. So, what does that mean for us as clinicians working with this population? Do you guys have any thoughts that come to mind when thinking about some of this data that is coming our way?
Well, I kind of wondered when you were talking if use of apps, while it might make things more comfortable, could also serve as like a safety behavior and kind of reinforce some of the anxiety.
Yes, for sure. The apps can definitely help to reinforce some of the anxiety. They can reinforce the avoidant behaviors. And
Mhm.
so you find your folks with social anxiety hiding behind the apps and moving slower, or if not ever, off of the apps. So it feels like they're doing something, but they're not really um, getting out there. Any other thoughts of how this data might impact us as clinicians? Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
I might tell a client that to look at the app as batting practice, that it's like you say, it's a combination of strategies, but if they're just not going to get out there, or a lot of people don't have a way to connect.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any other way. And of course, I'm older, but it seems like the younger cohorts, that's just all they do is
Yeah.
apps. And so, but I try and look at it as batting practice for then an in-person connection, or talking more on the phone even, is the next step for, it seems, younger folks.
Yeah. I like that as a strategy also, batting practice. So I agree that people rely often too much on the apps. Another reason to help our clients diversify their dating strategy is to help them set limits for themselves on the apps. So, like you said, the apps might provide too much protection. They may begin to rely on them. So, helping them to have a strategy on how they're going to move off of the apps. And then it also helps us to make sure our clients are prepared before we send them out there um, by giving them the tools that they need. But it's a little bit of a buffer, right? They get to practice some of the skills. Am I breaking up?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. It helps them to practice some of the skills um, behind the barrier, but if we allow them to stay on too long, it can reinforce some of the negative behaviors. Daniel?
Yeah, I think these are great points. I think the only thing that one caveat besides the use of safe, so like the apps can be great for people. I think you're saying they're a supplement. It's not realistic to think they'll just meet someone naturally. I think that all makes a lot of sense. Besides the use of apps as safety behavior, I think one of the things that I've encountered that I need to tell patients with social anxiety disorders is give them a sense of what's realistic within apps. So what you see in commercials, everyone meets this way, or your friend met this way, isn't necessarily realistic to your experience.
Right.
And more likely than not, you're going to have 400 swipes and people are going to get bored. And some of them are just like lonely, right?
Mhm.
Or they're using this for stimulation of some sort. And it's not necessarily going to always lead to. So, like, buttressing against the cost of sort of like rejection and a sense of no one likes me that sometimes comes from these things and comes from misunderstandings of how they work, sort of fantasy kind of understandings, I think
Certainly.
is important, especially for rejection sensitivity kind of clients.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really great point. I think it's also in terms of being realistic and having realistic expectations, having this data helps us to push maybe our clients who are reluctant to initiate a date because of their social anxiety, or perhaps they're interacting with somebody who they think is interested in them, but they're not asking them out. Perhaps this is part of what's going on also. So there's a lot of information to pull from this data that can be helpful in our work with clients with social anxiety. The next thing that people often come to me with, the next big worry is, what if I actually make a match? So how do I go from an app to in real life dating? If you're interested in dating someone that you've matched with, it's really important to get off of the app ASAP. So the batting practice idea here comes into play. You want to find your way off of the app as soon as possible. The app is a tool to meet people. It's not a tool to date people. And so this can be a real challenge for folks with social anxiety, because there's comfort in that barrier of being behind the screen. But the data, it tells us, well, it used to say 17 to 23 days was optimal time to get off of the apps. Now it suggests 1 to 2 weeks after making a match. So basically, as soon as you feel a spark and you see there's potential, move it off of the apps and get to the in-person date. Do it as soon as possible. And some of the reasons why you want to consider doing this is that, especially for our socially anxious folks who tend to be overthinkers, we can start to paint a picture of who we're talking to. We can come up with a story about who we're talking to, and we can idealize them. And that can lead to disappointment when you actually meet the person, if you are continuing to interact with them on the app and staying on there for too long, or the spark can end up dying out because you're not really engaging with the real version of them. And it can also help you to detect the people who are actually interested in you. So, if you find that you've matched with somebody, but they don't want to get off of the app, they want to continue to talk on the app, that's a really good indication that they're really possibly not into you. And then the next thing is what to say on the app or in person if you are interested in meeting up with someone. And I always tell my strategies to use the not asking on a date way of asking for a date. And so what I mean here is, it doesn't have to be so formal. You don't have to say, would you like to go on a date? You can let them know that you think you guys have a lot in common and you'd like to get together for coffee. You can ask them if they've been to the new spot on Broadway, or if they've seen the latest rom-com. You can let them know that you're having a great time and that you'd love to meet and talk more, continue the conversation without actually having to say, would you like to go on a date? I think that makes it feel more casual. It makes the stakes feel a little bit lower, and it makes it easier for you to do. And I let them know that sometimes the answer is going to be no, and try not to dwell on it. It's okay. The most important thing is that you're putting yourself out there, that you're trying, that you're taking a risk. Try to celebrate that. Try to congratulate yourselves on that. All right, stage 2, preparing for the date anxiety. So it can be really helpful to have a bit of a game plan. And now I say a bit of a game plan because we don't want to over prepare for this, but having specific points of conversation to be able to chat with your date about can be really helpful. You want to build on similarities that you've identified. And conversely, you might want to show some genuine interest in the differences that you've also identified. But I want for you to help your clients to understand that less is more. And the tendency to over prepare for those who have social anxiety, can lead to awkward, self-fulfilling moments, self-fulfilling prophecy moments. And that mental rehearsal, it may seem appealing. It may make you feel like you have a little bit more control, but it does lead to more awkward moments when things don't go according to plan and you're forced to respond and in the moment, and you don't have a way to respond that feels comfortable to you. So we want them to have a guide, not a script. I think it's also helpful to have time limits. I think time limits are really helpful with dates, especially if you're worried about not having enough to talk about whether or not there is a connection there. Book it in for a short amount of time. If it doesn't go well, you've got an out soon. If it does go well, that's fantastic. And you can schedule another date soon and you can leave them wanting more. And then you also want to figure out, if you're worried about not having much to talk about, what kind of a date helps you in that situation. And I think opting for an experiential date where the attention is not just on the two of you guys, but you have an external focus that you both can experience and comment on together. So think of mini golf or taking your pup to the dog park or thrifting, not something like the movies or a comedy show that will take up the entire space and leave little room for you to interact. And you want for it to enhance the date, not to take over the date. And then tail dating. I feel like this is right on time after the Super Bowl. In my book, Seeking Soulmate, I talk about tail dating. And tail dating it's an uplifting experience that can be done before you go on a date. And it can help you to foster a state of openness and kindness towards yourself that will be helpful on the date. So I want to walk you guys through this exercise if you're comfortable with it. And it's something you can do with your clients. There are lots of ways that you can tail date. This one is a mindful exercise that I find helpful with my clients. So if you're comfortable, you can take both of your hands and place them on your heart. And you can take 3 slow and gentle breaths in and out. And now in your mind, you can repeat the following phrases. I'm starting a new dating journey. Dating can be challenging. Challenges are a part of life. Dating can be fun. I'm open to what this journey will bring to me. May I be kind to myself throughout this journey. May I be compassionate towards myself and aware of my needs. May I be at ease. And take another breath in and out. And then you can come out, wiggle those fingers and those toes. I find this to be a really nice way to send yourself into a date, a way to ground yourself, but it's also a way to remind yourself of those mindful skills that can be so helpful. We'll talk more about it when we get to the next stage, but mindfulness can be a really great way to keep you present on a date. And then the last thing I think it's important to remind your clients of is that they should assume the best and not the worst. Jumping to conclusions about what your date may think about you is not going to benefit you, and it's not going to benefit them either. When anxiety gets the best of us, we make assumptions about what other people are thinking or feeling, but we're not giving our date a chance to really show us who they are if we've come up with what they're thinking before we've even gotten a chance to talk to them. So assume the best, not the worst. Stage 3, during the date anxiety. So I think the most important thing you can do is focus on being present instead of deciding how you feel about your date or how they feel about you. And oftentimes when you go into a date, you take those first few moments and you decide how you feel about them. And that's not giving the date a fair chance. I think number one, because nonverbal energy is not reliable. Everybody's nervous when we go on a date. It's an awkward experience. And so how someone shows up initially is not a good representation of who they are or how they feel about you. I think it's also important to note that awkwardness can be attributed to so many different factors. It can be related to their discomfort. It can be related to your discomfort. And these things can be completely independent of whether you guys are a good match or not. For example, your own social anxiety often leads to preoccupation with your internal experience and your worries. And it's extremely difficult to connect with somebody if you're not present. And your lack of presence might be interpreted as lack of interest when that could be the farthest thing from what you're actually feeling. So as the date progresses, you may settle in, you might change your mind about how you feel about this person, but you've already given them body language and tone of voice that has signaled to them that you don't like them, or vice versa, right? You might have decided early on that you like this person, and as you've gone through the experience, you realize that this is not a match, but you have made a decision very early on instead of being present and allowing yourself to settle into the date and get to know the person. So this focus on your internal experience that so many folks with social anxiety experience can be overwhelming. It can cause you to not connect and can cause you to not be genuine. And one exercise that I found really helpful with my clients is mindful hydrating. And so in most cases, if you're out on a date, you have access to water. Even if you're on an experiential date, everybody's got their water bottles with them. So this is a great way to sneak in a mindful moment. You can make it sneaky if you're already feeling like you're not present. A couple more, like a minute of a mindful exercise like this won't do you any harm, and it'll give you an opportunity to bring yourself back into the moment. And so what mindful hydrating is all about is engaging your senses. And so what you're going to do, I'm going to just bring my glass of water here. I'm going to pretend like it's on the table, like I'm not holding it. You're going to first notice your water. What does it look like? Is it in a glass? Is there condensation? How full is it? Then you're going to grab your water. What does it feel like? Is it cold? Is it wet? What does it smell like? Hopefully nothing. Unless you've got a lime or lemon or something in there. Hopefully nothing. What does it smell like? And you're going to move it around in your hand a little bit. You can see the movement. You can hear the ice, maybe, or the swishing of the water. What does it taste like? What does it feel like going down your throat? And when you're done swallowing, take a look at your date. What do they look like? What are they wearing? Notice their posture, maybe their facial features. Tune into the sound and the cadence of their voice. Pay attention to what they're saying and show genuine interest. This shift will give you your best shot at making a genuine connection. And that little mini mindful exercise is a great way to move yourself from your internal experience back into the present moment. I also encourage my clients to own their anxiety around being exposed. In many cases, people will find your honesty and your reaction endearing. In Seeking Soulmate, I spent some time on this. Being at peace with who you are, including your flaws, mistakes, fears, and so on, makes you personable and engaging. And if you're not at peace with these qualities, just accepting that fact and owning it is more appealing than hiding your true self. This means you must learn to be comfortable with who you are, including your flaws, and be yourself. I find that role plays can be really helpful with clients who struggle with this. Spending time with your clients, practicing how to own their flaws instead of covering them up. It makes it more possible for them to do this in the moment and to make that connection, increase the odds of making that connection. Also, in dating scenarios, enhancing self-disclosure, it may result in both increased anxiety and more positive relationship outcomes, according to many studies, but one in particular by Hope, Heimberg, and Turk. And we know this, when we're doing exposures, successful exposures will not only help clients make progress, but it's going to increase their anxiety. But we want them to get comfortable with the anxiety and practice using the tools that we've given them to help manage the anxiety. It's not about getting rid of it. It's about helping them to be able to manage it and know that they can get through it. So we practice helping our clients talk about things that are important to them as well when they're on dates. And while this might be the last thing that you want to do, it helps to build true intimacy based on knowing and understanding each other. And you can't have this without sharing. So helping your clients to understand what is appropriate to share doesn't mean you're going to share your whole life story, but consider telling your date about something that is important to you or somebody that's important to you, or even talking about your food, whether you like it or not, or how nervous you were to come on this date. This is another great role play to do with your clients, modeling it for them and then flipping it so that they can practice doing it and becoming more skilled at doing it on the date, and then sending them off into the world to do a behavioral experiment. So you also, in line with talking about what's appropriate, you want to help them to understand appropriate sharing versus inappropriate sharing. So sometimes we might overdo it. You might think that we're doing the thing, we're sharing, but we're sharing too much. And so helping them understand you want to share a part of you, but you don't want to overdo it. For example, I'm a big Harry Potter fan. So I might share that I love Harry Potter and the wizarding world, and I have since I was in my 20s, and I was just blown away by the complex relationships that J.K. Rowling created and the relatable stories. Inappropriate sharing, even though I may want to do this, might be me showing up on a date in full Harry Potter cosplay, and drawing parallels the entire time between characters and my date, and how we could go LARPing together. Unless we met role playing or LARPing, and we decided together to show up on a Harry Potter date, this would be a little bit of inappropriate sharing. All right, on to slide 9 and stage 4, after the date anxiety. So you would think that after the date, there would be possibly less anxiety, but no, I find that my clients are really anxious about this part of the dating experience too. You've met somebody, you've had the date. Now what do you do afterwards? So I encourage my clients to be direct and to be timely. So in person, you can say something like, I had fun and I'd love to get together again. Or you can say that it was nice to meet you, but I don't think it's a romantic match. I know both of those might feel awkward, maybe in different ways, and you have to be vulnerable to do this, but you feel empowered when you're direct and kind when you're not leading someone on. If that is too much, which oftentimes it can feel like too much, then I encourage my clients to send a text on the way home. But we do this immediately because waiting for another person to reach out can add unnecessary stress. And it can work both ways, right? You don't want to be the one adding unnecessary stress, and you don't want to add unnecessary stress to yourself. So you take control of it. You don't have to. We're not playing games here. There are no rules. We're taking control of the situation and we are expressing how we feel. You also don't want for them to get the wrong impression, right? They might have gotten the wrong impression that either you liked them or that you didn't like them. So be direct, be timely. It'll help everybody else. It'll help everybody in the situation out. And this is another great role play. I have role play alert written down, but it's a really great role play to do with your clients. And then the next concern is, what if the worst happens and they reject me? And so I help my clients to really kind of go through these 5 different steps here. Feeling your feelings, of course, right? You don't have to pretend like it didn't hurt. You don't have to pretend like it wasn't a big deal. Your feelings are hurt when you're rejected. And that's okay to own it. But you also want to make sure that you accept the truth. You don't want to try to convince them of something else. You don't want to see if we go on another date and maybe I can change the way that they feel. Accept what the truth is about the situation. And you want to be realistic here. Dating means that there's going to be rejection, and it might take more than a couple of dates or more than that to find a match. So just understanding that it's all part of the process. And then you want to seek your supports. You need to have your folks, the people who know what's going on with you, that you're going out on dates. You want to call on them and you want for them to be there for you and let them know, I had a really tough date. I was rejected. I need some loving from my friends. And then you also want to help them to forge ahead, because this is where the avoidance starts to kick in. But if they start to avoid, if they fall back on that, then they're not moving forward towards their goals. So you want to help them to be able to forge ahead instead of doing what feels normal and comfortable for them. So some things to consider at any stage of dating. 1, dating fatigue. Let's talk a little bit about that. 2, reality testing with your clients. And then 3, setting boundaries. So dating fatigue. Dating fatigue is basically dating burnout. And this is where past experiences linger and they give us a negative outlook on dating. And it can lead us to unfairly labeling our dating pool, or putting people into a box and having a really negative perspective on the entire experience of dating. And of course, if you're feeling burned out, then you're vulnerable, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling unsure. So some signs that I've identified and spent some time talking about in Seeking Soulmate are whenever you think of dating, you're suddenly overcome with exhaustion. Oh, I forgot to change the slide. You've had one bad date after another. Every date annoys you. You predict your dates will go badly. You're just thinking of going on apps turns your mood. You're way too picky. Your friends are tired of listening to you complain, and dating just ain't fun. In a lot of cases, a little bit of self-compassion can go a long way here. I think a lot of people get the advice to get some distance and to take a break from dating. But as we've talked about, taking a break for too long can lead to avoidance with your clients with social anxiety. It also might lead to repeating the same pattern the next time that you're dating. And so you want to get to those underlying reasons for why you might have such a negative outlook on dating and why you're experiencing dating fatigue. But while you're building yourself up, try a little bit of self-compassion. Try to build yourself up and adopt a stance of understanding and kindness towards yourself and the challenges that you're experiencing and maybe the flaws that you've identified, and take some time to comfort yourself so you can respond to your negative thoughts in a more adaptive way and have a more balanced mindset. Reality testing. So nearly half of Americans think dating is harder now than it was 10 years ago. And I think they're right. I think with more options, it becomes more challenging to find somebody. So, you know, you want to let them know, you want to be realistic that it can be really challenging, and there are more challenges today. And so we need to figure out how we're going to navigate this so that those challenges are not overwhelming you. Like going on a job interview also, rejection is built into the process. And so not everybody's going to be interested in you, even if you're Taylor Swift. Everybody is not a match, and that is okay. It might not feel okay, but intellectually you have to know that it is part of the process, and our clients need to be armed with the tools they need to be able to manage that. Dating is also a numbers game. So that seems cliche, I know, but the more you put yourself out there, the more you increase your odds of finding a match. So figuring out what makes sense, how often you're putting yourself out there, how you're taking care of yourself throughout the process will be really helpful, sitting with them and figuring that out so that they're not just you playing the numbers game without having a little bit of a strategy there. It's gonna hurt from time to time, but remembering that you're giving your clients the tools and the skills they need to be able to manage it, reminding them of the tools and skills that they've developed over time. And if they don't have them, then this is a great time to make sure you're focusing on building that toolkit for them and making this a priority. And then nothing brings people together more than a common enemy. In this case, we're talking about dating distress. This is a little tongue in cheek, but you don't need to suffer alone. Your dating experiences offer you more opportunities to connect with people and to widen your circle. There was a study in 2003 that showed that 70% of Gen Zers report feeling stressed about their love life, 70%. And 57% of millennials, 49% of Gen X, 27% of baby boomers. People are stressed about dating. Like we said, it's tougher now than it ever was. And so these stats are telling me that there's a lot here to talk about with your peers, your coworkers, your friends, and truly connect with them. The bonus here is that you're increasing your social circle, which is giving you more opportunities to work on your social skills. The double bonus here is that you've increased your dating pool. The more that you own that you're looking for love, the more you're talking about it with people, these people become resources for meeting new people to date. And so it all kind of feeds itself. And then finally, setting boundaries. Where are we at with time? Okay. We could spend a whole hour talking about setting boundaries. Because folks with social anxiety are often preoccupied with their internal experience, And that internal experience is often triggered by their perception of how other people are experiencing them. It can be extremely helpful to shift the dialogue and spend some time exploring their needs and their limitations. Dating is not just about what your date likes or what they think of you. It's also about what you like. It's also about if they're a good fit for you. It's also about how you feel when you're with them and more. So what's okay and what's not okay? What behaviors are unacceptable? How do they treat others? Do they seem interested in you? Boundaries help you to identify unhelpful patterns and change them. And if you're used to losing yourself in a relationship, for example, then setting boundaries can help you to advocate for yourself from the start instead of habitually defaulting to what your date wants and what your date needs and fitting into your idea of who is their best match. It also helps to reinforce that your needs are important. So by shifting your focus, shifting the focus to your client's needs, you're helping them to not only understand that their needs are important, but to prioritize them. And as your client practices setting boundaries, they're going to feel a boost in their self-esteem and their self-worth. It also takes the focus off of the client solely. So instead of your client being internally focused all of the time and paying attention to how their date, paying attention to what their date wants, they can shift the focus to how their date is moving throughout the world, how they're engaging with them, how they're engaging with the people around you. This will also give you something else, very important, something else to be able to think about instead of all of the stuff that's going on internally, all the negative self-talk, all of the worries that you're having about yourself. And that can lead to more genuine exchanges. And then it can help you get a sense of if this person is a good fit for you or not, instead of whether you're good enough for them. And so we know dating is complex, but this part of dating is not complex. It's pretty simple. You're dating to see if you're a good match, if you work well together, if you have something in common, if you guys are attracted to each other. And this can only happen if you guys are getting to know each other, getting to know the real versions of each other. And it's not going to happen if you're only showing up as a version of yourself. And then it gives you an opportunity. Boundaries give you an opportunity to show your date how you like to be treated. When we accept treatment from others that's not okay with us, we're telling our date that it is okay. So being really clear about your boundaries from the beginning is a really great way to show your date how you like to be treated and what's acceptable to you. Now, expressing your boundaries on the first date can be a little tricky. We're not talking about major stuff unless they cross a major boundary. But it's not just about you. It's also about a connection with the person that you're dating. You being able to set boundaries opens up a discussion and allows your date to be able to do the same. And also gives you guys a great way to establish a relationship based on mutual respect and caring about each other's needs from the very beginning. Like I said, you're not going to be teaching your client how to behave on a first date, but you can set certain boundaries from the very beginning, time boundaries, right? I only have this amount of time to meet. Emotional boundaries, and that can include if you're on a date with somebody who's culturally insensitive, not feeling like you need to educate them, drawing a line about what you're comfortable talking and what you're not comfortable talking about, listening to your gut if red flags pop up, and then physical boundaries, sexual boundaries, right? If someone's getting too close into your personal space, if they invite you back to their room and you're not into that. And then of course, I think something that we don't think about, financial boundaries too. You know, if somebody's taking you on a date, who's paying for this date, especially if they've invited you somewhere expensive and you're working with a budget. So these are just some boundaries to be thinking about. And that's all I've got for you guys. Thank you.